Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Kazu Zunaha.
Yes.
There's a wonderful summary of what I want to speak. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, dear friends, fellow bankers, my dear friends in Japan, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure and privilege to be an integral part of this webinar. A friend in need is a friend indeed, as I say. That is precisely truly experienced by Qatar. Even at a personal level, I can say Japanese and Japan are true friends. I can only recall my own association ever since I set my footprint for the institution in 2006. The experience I've had has been so loving and caring, so personal. I find it hard to express. It's an extraordinary feel. And every year when I go, I get recharged. And the friendship which we have developed over the years has reached time and again new heights. In 2008 and 9, when I started visiting further to strengthen it, Japanese have understood I am a vegetarian, so there was a personal home-cooked food, absolutely vegetarian food was served for me through my friends. And even they celebrated, whenever they come here, that is another point, that whenever they come here, Japanese friends whom I met in the banking circle or the industry circle, personal friends, they make a point to personally greet and exchange warmly. That's a special feel. So much so it was incidental. On 4th April 2015, I was there for my bank mission. And my Japanese friends know that my birthday is on 4th April. They celebrated. Over 300 people had lunch on the day. It was a great delight to come and again meet my good friends. And it is a true honor to be associated with such a country of great governance and great substance and substantive compliance like Qatar. Let me get into the prime mission today. The bilateral and synergistic opportunities between Qatar and Japan. This session has come at a time where we are facing the extraordinary set of transformation in personal life and professional life. The world is changing. And the challenges we are facing on account of this pandemic, since the beginning of this year, it has taken its toll in all substance. Since March, visibly shaking the whole world, shaking the humanity. The risks are indefinable. Economic risk, financial risk, inclusive. Social risk, human risk, the tragic loss. We have lost over 11.5 million, rather infected with 11.5 million people, or over 500,000 people are no more. And as a social risk, which we are seeing today, environment and the social risk are something which we need to recognize and realign to human consciousness, human prosperity. That is the need of the hour. Let's look at specific slides which I have prepared to put it in a nutshell, what this crisis is all about and how do we recognize these challenges and what governments have done, individuals are doing to sustain the value chain. Let's move on. Here is my presentation, which is getting set. Now, in terms of the overall momentum, it is, as I said, we are going to look at the bilateral opportunities. Bilateral opportunities in terms of trade, investment, banking, and finance is what the purpose. We're going to look at, in all forms, these challenges and the solutions which we are seeing. Let me move on. Let's look at, for a minute, global economies. We have been getting very many measurements. When we looked at the International Monetary Fund measurement in October last year, when the bankers, technocrats, central bankers, politicians, and the government representatives, when we met, the world was in different condition. Our prediction was the global growth is not less than 3.7, 3.8%. If trade dispute between China and US resolve, possibly even 3.9%. When we met again in January in Davos in Switzerland, it was revised downward to 3.3, between 3 to 3.3. Within 2 months, the world has changed. In March, we felt it's not normal. It's going to be new normal. WHO is contemplating whether it is a pandemic or not. When we recognize it's a pandemic, in April, International Monetary Fund predicted a global growth is going to contract in aggregate terms. Still, there are possibilities in emerging and developing economies, some momentum. OECD came with their own prediction. They said no, it's going to be 5.2% minimum contraction in global terms. World Bank came with this very similar reflection. If there is a second wave, OECD even said 6.7% could be the contraction. Now, as good as last week, International Monetary Fund with absolute clarity. This is what So clearly you are seeing extraordinary set of challenges. In aggregate terms, we're going to lose 4.9%, and the emerging markets are going to perform also in contraction. And we have seen countries, advanced economies, listed under advanced economies, are going to have contraction to the tune of -8%. Contraction of 8%, that's huge. United States will be contracting 8%. Euro will be contracting nearly 10%. Similarly, 8% for United Kingdom. Japan, 5.8%, possibly next year. It will recover by 2.4% in positive terms. Emerging economies, so-called developing economies, they're going to have a momentum in positive terms next year, not this year. This year, 3% contraction, and China may show up. It's an indication again, 1%. Now, India is going to contract by 4.5%. We have no exception to the frame. Whether it is developed world or developing world, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East and Central Asia are all under contraction. That's the reality. So what do we do when we know the world economy is in big crisis? We need to fix it. We have to take fiscal and monetary actions, and that's what the initiatives we have taken. We have taken a collective vision. We learned out of 2008 crisis. That was confined to financial crisis. Financial crisis moved into a funding crisis. Liquidity has moved from a funding to solvency and sovereign issue on occasions. So we printed money, improving the money supply, increasing the money supply. Hot money was transcending across and lifting the stock market, decelerating the currency market, lifting the, again, housing market from the depression. So after 1930 depression, we got into a first crisis of this century in 2008 and 9. That was confined to only developed world. Developing economies were scoring. And now, nobody is an exception. This is a great recession. And that's what, allow me. Now, what are the fiscal measures? Look at what the...
Welcome back. Japan has approved another $1 trillion to revive its coronavirus-hit economy. The government has now committed more than $2 trillion, and that's more than 40% of GDP, one of the biggest fiscal aid packages in the world. The move comes as Japan is forecast to sink into recession this year. The economy is forecast to contract a record-breaking 21.5% this quarter. The budget is partially funded by 31.9 trillion yen. That's about $300 billion in government bonds, and that's the biggest in history. So measures include boosting medical expenditure, as well as helping struggling firms with rent payment and subsidies. The bill goes to Parliament next month. Well, investors have been buoyed by stimulus optimism. The Nikkei closed up.
So, over the years, we have learned fiscal and monetary alignment has to come. Light switch regulation has failed. So, fiscal policy which comes from the government and the monetary policy which comes from the technocrat like central bankers, money supply, inflation, interest rates are all monetary policy. They have to align. And we have to redefine the regulatory framework, whether it is enterprise risk framework or regulatory authorities have to align the risk framework, because we are in new normal, not anymore in the normalcy. So till we have a clinical medical solution, we need to come to terms. This is a new world where we need value chain to create sustainability. We have to save lives. We have to keep feeding them, individual or institutions, and government comes to rescue directly in cash, in kind, through multiple forms. Some of the policy decisions are what Japan has done twice, stimulus, fiscal terms, and they have put a huge amount of money into the frame to see sustainability comes in prospects. What a wise decision again. In percentage terms of gross outlay, which they allocated to GDP, is substantial, 2 trillion. That's huge, over 35%. Now, it is not alone. You have to understand, over the world, over the years, we have understood fiscal stimulus is required at times. Now, 22 trillion has been pumped, as good as United States GDP. More than that has been put to stimulate the world. And Japan has done in two phases, one in April, another one in June.
Now, the Bank of Japan has unveiled extra stimulus to combat the economic fallout from the coronavirus. It's pledged to buy an unlimited amount of bonds to keep borrowing costs low. It's the second month in a row Japan has eased monetary policy. Michio Ishida reports.
Bank of Japan Governor Haruhiko Kuroda has pledged to aggressively purchase corporate bonds, removing its upper limit of 20 trillion yen, or $186.5 billion. He said purchasing bonds will also prevent long-term interest rates from rising. This is huge for the BOJ, but Mr. Kuroda tried to ease concerns, stating there is still room for further purchase. The purpose is for BOJ to do what it can to prevent companies from financial difficulties due to the impact of COVID-19. Now, this was welcomed by the market. Analysts say especially suffering are the small and medium-sized enterprises forced to shut down their businesses as Japan is in a state of emergency. Some have done so voluntarily even before the declaration. But there are concerns the BOJ has limited fresh measures. In their views, Japan may go back to deflation. Mr. Kuroda denied that possibility, stating he does not think consumer price will continuously fall. He reminded the Japanese government has formed a huge emergency package and it aims to provide funds to small and medium-sized firms and individuals, and it's expected to be approved in Parliament later this week.
It's a good move. Substantive contribution to make sure you put money in the hands of individuals and business to stay in order. And that's very important, liquidity and affordability. You have to clearly recognize everyone is in disruption. Disaster recovery to business continuity. You have to necessarily understand the challenge one has to go through. So when it comes to...
On Thursday night, the Bank of Japan released the minutes for their last meeting. And on the whole, there weren't a lot of surprises. As was already announced, they've increased their cash lending to strapped businesses in Japan from 700 billion US dollar equivalent to 1 trillion US dollar equivalent. Globally now, central banks are offering about $22 trillion in assistance to economies, which is equal to the entire output of the United States. They did, however, say that they were much more concerned about the path and the longevity of the coronavirus than they were about anything else, and some members wanted the stimulus package to be even higher. Lastly, they curbed dollar-denominated operations as the funding for US dollars has gotten quite a bit easier with the US Fed's activity.
So that's very important. You understand the importance of what Bank of Japan has done. That's on the monetary side as well as fiscal side, there is an alignment. Now, the
U.S. Federal Reserve has kept interest rates unchanged at 0 to 0.25% and said it would keep interest rates near zero through 2022. It also projected the U.S. economy would shrink by 6.5% this year, but bounce back with a 5% gain in 2021.
We're not thinking about raising rates. We're not even thinking about raising rates. So what we're thinking about is providing support for this economy. We do think this is going to take some time.
So support for the economy. So the monetary policy should align with the fiscal policy. That's the message Fed is giving. Again, corporate bond buying programs, trillions of dollars have been pumped. When it comes to European Central Bank, they have done the very similar equation. As it is summed up, clearly we need to improve the liquidity, improve the debt servicing capacity, and every business should thrive, small or medium or big business. And that's what every country has done, especially those who are vulnerable with less capital, huge business disruptions, whether supply chain or horizontal or vertical combination of business. You have to recognize, you have to protect them so that when the world recovers, they come back on track. Till then, it's a public-private partnership. That's what the message is. When it comes to global market, everyone is concerned about the commodity-driven economies and countries in the Gulf where we have maximum through hydrocarbon revenues. They have to look at it. In April, the oil price went negative for want of storage, but oil futures have recovered quickly, and we know the price will get back to terms. Now, demand and supply, OPEC or non-OPEC, are all converging to stabilize the oil price, and we have now Brent as well as US crude over 40. Here is the graphics. US crude now is over 40, and again, Brent is over 42. So that's the level. Let's come to our specific in terms of Qatar economy. His Excellency, the Ambassador of Japan to Qatar has mentioned about Qatar's bilateral relationship. Qatar economy has been setting its right kind of governance and vision. They measured the risk in terms of blockade. Self-reliance was the motive, and it enabled a lot of initiatives. And again, as a rehearsal to COVID, it was a true enabler. Now, this crisis is well managed, monetary side as well as fiscal side. On the healthcare side, the unsung heroes have done a terrific job. And we have also seen Qatar economy through Central Bank and the development programs through Qatar Development Bank has supported the liquidity for very many. Qatar economy is going to do a contraction of 4.5%. Possibly next year we will be recovering 4.5 to 4.75. As IMF has predicted, we need a clinical solution. Once we have a clinical solution, the assumptions are correct. If assumptions are to be interpreted in right terms, hopefully the world should recover in 2021, and Qatar and Japan will recover as well in substance. Now, let's look at in banking terms. Banking terms, we have definite growth in terms of credit in the first 5 months, 2.5% credit expansion. Deposit expansion, very similar to Flaction. We have consumer retailing, very marginal growth. Service has grown. Contract has marginally grown. So overall, if you look at the momentum is there, but it remains to be seen the total impact in the coming quarters. Now, what Qatar banking has done, what the regulators have done, the central bank has done, is to maintain the social distancing on the social risk management and hygiene, transaction-based processing when the branch is open in terms of banking, what sort of preconditions we should sit in to protect the customers as well as safety of the employees. We have the government has regulated clearly the practices. And when it comes to digital advantage, transaction-based processing, huge accelerations. We have seen huge shift between 80 to 85% to digital from conventional brick and mortar. Brick to click has been the new model. That acceleration is enabled through COVID-19. Otherwise, they have issued a promulgation. The Highness has allocated $20.5 billion, 75 billion Qatari riyal has been an enabler. Interest postponement, loan postponement, deferment, and again, wage protection, rent protection, and also salary was paid for those disruptive companies through Qatar Development Bank support. On balance sheet, off balance sheet, there were enablers, tools were used. seen the reforms, quite productive, that has given a bit of stability. Now, let us look at the bilateral relationship. The hydrocarbons segment, as His Excellency has mentioned, it is a 50-year relationship next year. In 1971, Qatar born as a nation. And 1972, the formal diplomacy started between Qatar and Japan. It's an extraordinary relationship. In 1996, in Kawagoe, the first consignment of LNG terminal, LNG was consigned by Qatar Gas. They never look back. And that's the kind of relationship. In bilateral term, hydrocarbon and the industrial estates, whether it is Ras Al Khaimah, whether it is Umsai, plenty of support in the North Field as well as industrial estates, Japanese companies, very many, has worked on to support this bilateral opportunities in terms of hydrocarbon segment. And we have seen the relationship is growing day by day. Bilateral trade is improved to 14 billion plus. When it comes to support in the terms of infrastructure, hydrocarbon, non-hydrocarbon side, we also have a very big support. Now, the relationship is enduring in multiple form and substance. The airport, again, Takenaka, Biyashi has supported Musharraf Properties. We have seen Qatar Electricity Water Company, and again, the Qatar Karama has been enabled through Japanese companies, Tokyo Gas and Qatar Gas are joint ventures when it comes to Kansai Electric, Chub Electric. We have seen a similar reflection of bilateral partnership in building momentum in the hydrocarbon side. And we have vertical arrangements to long-term support consistently, even when Japan had to go through a nuclear incident. Qatar came to support. The mission is to support in total term as true friends. And that's been the reflection. And we have seen hydrocarbon apart.
But as I mentioned, regarding the North Field, we are full steam ahead. We are, as we have mentioned in the past, we're going to be awarding all our contracts for North Field expansion project. We have two phases, the east and the south expansion. We're going to go from 77 million tons per annum to 110 million tons per annum by 2025, and then up from 110 to 126 by the year 2027. We've ordered all the shipping requirements, and we've booked slots for about $20 billion. We've announced just a couple of weeks ago, and that's at the cost of around $20 billion US, and we've booked up 60% of the entire world's capacity of building LNG ships. So these, we call them our moving pipelines, if you will, but that's to have our full supply chain up and ready by the time we have all the developments in place.
So that's the relationship we are talking about. We have 3,000 gas consignment as reached last year. And again, we have seen government to government. His Highness visited last year, January, and signed very many memorandum of understanding. And again, for the enthronement of Japanese Emperor, he was there in October 2019. So that's huge in terms of building this partnership. Now, this partnership, you are seeing it. Gas deliveries, you are seeing it. And the enthronement is happening. Our ambassador was there this year. His Excellency Kazuo Tsunaga celebrated 60th birthday of His Majesty Emperor this year, February 2020. It's a growing relationship. We recognize this in multiple forms. And Qatar-Japan trade is moving in the right direction. Hydrocarbon is moving in the right direction. Non-hydrocarbon. Now, we have very many opportunities coming up. Chiyoda is supporting for front-end expansion, design feed for Qatar Gas. Similarly, company ARM is supporting quality training here to produce electric car in 2022 for Qatar. Airport, LNG, shipping lines, whether it is NYK, YSK lines, or others, we have continuing commitment for gas transportations and gas productions. And that's the kind of joint ventures. His Excellency has mentioned about investments with Qatar, and they put in multiple countries, whether it's Jordan or US. It's a growing alliance to see we grow together. When it comes to synergistic opportunities, we have plenty of reasoning to believe that we have trade, we have further scope. Investments, we have bigger scope. We also have scope in terms of banking.